Namaste, friends. Namaste. Welcome. Today is the 11th of February 2021. And I am extremely delighted to be your host today for our conversations with Viniyoga women. We call it Shri Shakti, our powerful ladies of Viniyoga. And today I have the great pleasure to talk with Sarah Ryan from England. And I have so many things to say about Sarah. She's been the most wonderful student for the last 16 years now. She has been the most wonderful, reliable proofreader of almost all of our previous publications in the last 10 years, I would say. She has been an amazing representative of the Viniyoga tradition. And so we are very happy to welcome Sarah to our conversation. Namaste, Sarah. How do you feel today?
Nervous, actually, in spite of everything you do to try and calm me down.
Don't be nervous, Sarah. I think I should be more nervous than you should be more nervous. Anyway, my dear friends, Sarah loves chanting very much. So I'm going to ask her to begin with a chant that she loves very much, and then we will begin our conversation. Please, Sarah, namaste.
It's from the Narayana Upanishad.
Please.
Om Pratyaganandam Brahma Purusham Pranavasvarupam Akara Ukara Makara Iti Tanekadha Samabharatade Tadomiti Yamuktva Muchyate Yogi Janma Samsara Bandhanat Om Namo Narayana-yeti mantropasaka Vaikuntha bhuvalokam gamishyati Taridam param pundarikam vijnanaghanam Tasmat tadidavan matram Brahmanyo devaki putro Brahmanyo madhusudano Om Sarvabhutasthame Narayanam Karana Rupamakara Parabrahmo Etadatarvashiro Yodhite Prataradhiyano ratrikritam papannashayati Sayamadhiyano divasakritam papannashayati Madhyaninamadityabimukodhiyana Panchapatakopapatak pramuchyate Sarva Veda Parayana Punya Labhate Narayana Sayujyamavapnoti Shriman Narayana Sayujyamavapnoti Ya evam Veda ityupanishad.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This is so nice chanting. And I want you to just share with all of us why you choose this chant today and what it means to you, what it means to you. We don't need the word-to-word meaning of the chant, but what does it personally mean to you and why you make this choice?
I think it was about 2 years ago when you had been doing a course online about mantra, and you'd said to people, so which mantra actually had the greatest effect? Which mantra that we used on this course had the greatest effect on you? So I told you when I saw you for my next individual lesson, the mantra that had the most effect was Om Namo Narayanaya. And so then I was very grateful because you gave me a practice and it was based completely on that mantra. And included in the practice was for me to chant this. And I think it was about 18 months before I felt that I'd learned it by heart. And even now, I mean, when you asked me to chant this morning, I definitely had the book here. Otherwise, every time I was chanting one sentence, I would have been thinking, yes, but what's the next one? But it's so beautiful. So that's how it happened. So it's part of my practice. What does it mean to me? That chant, Om Namo Narayanaya, it takes me to the divine within me. That's how I see it. This chant does that. The mantra itself does it. I love that idea. It goes right back to when we did the yoga therapy course together, when I did it with you, and I was so fortunate because your father was also teaching on that course. And I was very, very fortunate too to have Chandra as my study buddy. And you chanted, I think it was probably this chant one time. And Chandra was obviously very, very affected by it. I don't think I'd even really, the name Narayana did not mean much to me at that point. But then I was interested after that. And so now it's very, very special for me.
That's so wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And for the people who did not know what this chant is, this is a chant that is the last part of an Upanishad that is called the Narayana Upanishad. This Upanishad has 3 parts, and this is the last part of this Upanishad. So anyway, that is the beautiful chant by Sarah. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing this, because it's also one of the favorite chants of my father and my grandfather. So I'm sure they are also listening into this conversation. Anyway, Sarah, now we come to you living behind the Narayana for a while. I'm very fascinated about your yoga journey because I know that you have been practicing yoga for a very long time, much before even I was born. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey that you began, when you began, and where did you begin, and how it brought you slowly to the Viniyoga tradition a bit later, and how that sustained you since then? So a little journey, please, a history, walk down memory lane.
Well, I think it was when I was pregnant with my daughter, with my oldest child, and I was at home, and then there came on television a daytime program. I think they were showing it twice a week, and it was about 20 minutes, and it was yoga. And I'd never come across yoga before. At that time, I was 23. And the only way actually I had come across it, because I always loved reading when I was a child, and I would read lots of stories. Some of them were set in India, and occasionally they would talk about yogis, and they were always seen as kind of tricksters, you know. So this was the first time, and the program was done beautifully. You know, if you were to ask me to do a program on television on yoga, I would say, no, I don't think so, but it was done beautifully, and I was completely and utterly hooked right from that moment. I'd never known what I wanted. I always knew I wanted to get married and have children, but I never knew anything else. And so yoga was my passion after that. And very soon after that, because there was so little, I didn't know what to do when the program stopped. And then a new magazine came out, and I saw that there was somewhere up in London. And at that time, I wasn't living so far. So once a week, I would drive up to London and go to this studio. It was what was it called? A Shivananda Yoga Vedanta Center. And got to know the people there. But then with having a small child, it was too difficult to go on going up to London. So I started teaching just like that, no training at all. I can still remember doing awful things. Asking somebody who had no, I don't think I'm even go there. It's terrible. But anyway, I was
curiosity. Can you tell the audience which year was it that you started yoga, so people know that?
1970.
Wow, that's 51 years ago, Sarah. I was not even born at that time. That's amazing. So go on, you started teaching.
Yes, and finally, after teaching for about 12 years, I actually did a teacher training course, but I have never stopped training ever since, as you know.
Yes.
So, and then but it wasn't until 1987, when I was already a teacher trainer for the British Wheel of Yoga, that I came across Viniyoga. And that was just wonderful, because I'd always known that yoga could take me as deep as I wanted to go, but I knew it had to be somebody or a teaching that I completely trusted, one that made absolute sense. And I didn't find it until I came to that teaching. And I did it through Paul Harvey, who is a student of your father's.
Yes.
And I trained with him.
That's good.
So that was 1987 when I started in this lineage.
And what sustained you since 1987? Because even today you are part of the Viniyoga tradition. And what is sustaining you for so long? Because many people get bored very quickly and try to change different schools and different teachers. What is it that sustained you for so long?
Because this tradition, it makes complete sense. Everything hangs together. So before I had experienced various different teachers, but it was always, now we're going to do our asana, now we're going to do our pranayama, now we're going to do the philosophy, now we're going to do meditation, which often seems to have no correlation with anything else that we were doing. In Viniyoga, everything hangs together. The teachings are taught so that they're completely congruent with the practicing. Yes, so I have just always completely trusted this tradition ever since then. I think it's mainly that, but it's also how Viniyoga, how we use all the tools of yoga. And more chanting has become so important to me.
That's very interesting. Can you tell me or tell our audience as well today why this chanting has become so important for you? Because you just told a little earlier, around 2007, when you heard the chant during your therapy training, you were not so keen on the chanting, perhaps, or maybe Narayana, perhaps. But I know from you, from nowadays, you are taking chanting classes not only with my mother, but also with me. And you're also teaching many people chanting. What is it that is in the chanting that is so appealing to you? It's very fascinating.
I would just stop that.
Oh, Sarah, my dear friends, Sarah has gone to attend a telephone call or probably tell the person that she's busy in a meeting. So we will continue in a second. But just to let you know, my dear friend, Sarah is teaching chanting and yoga in Dorchester.
I just don't know how
Now
to deal.
she's back alive. Now she's back alive. Actually, we did a commercial break for you, Sarah. We promoted your chanting and yoga classes in the
Thank
Dorchester
you very much,
yoga
Kausthub.
school. So this is the most fun part of the interview. You're going to attend the telephone call.
I thought it would happen sometime or other. It's because of what it does for me. I've got a very my mind is, is here, there, and everywhere, and chanting more than any other of the tools of yoga helps to calm me down. And very often, if I'm feeling agitated, then it's the only tool that I can really use. But I can sit and chant, and then I feel better. Sometimes when I'm teaching people, teaching Westerners, I say it can't really be explained in Western terms. Actually, in traditional Indian terms, there's many explanations for it, beautiful explanations, about the importance of sound and vibration and so on. It can't really be explained in Western terms, because for Westerners to accept it, it would all have to be tested and proved and so on.
It's true, but I want to investigate this matter further, if you may allow me to. Well, you said that in 1970s onwards, you started to do yoga with the Shivananda Vedanta tradition. And I know from the Shivananda Vedanta tradition, they are also doing a lot of chanting and things like that. But yet, it did not really appeal to you until perhaps in the last 15 years or so, I would say, at a very deep level. Would it be correct to say that? And if that is the case, what's the difference you got? What's the difference? Because they're also chanting and we are also chanting. So what's the difference you feel?
Okay, first to correct you, no, I loved chanting from kind of 1990s onwards.
Oh, good.
I mean, Paul was amazing because he found chanting difficult, but he nevertheless did instill that love, I think, in many people. So I had loved it for a long while. And it is interesting that you say that, because until I came to it in Viniyoga, I actually had felt uncomfortable with the chanting that I had done at the Shivananda Yoga Vedanta Center, but also one or two other teachers. And then it was because I trusted the tradition and the teachings so much, so that when I was asked to chant in this tradition, the old feelings came up again, of course. And so I had to think about it. I really had to reflect. And I said to myself, if you really trust the teachings and the teacher, that they would not ask you to do anything that was wrong, then you should go for it. Because what I was disliking was the fact that I was being asked to chant words that I didn't understand. Once I finally worked out that this was a teaching, a tradition that I did trust, actually, then it was okay. I still like to know what it is I'm chanting, but it's not so necessary. So that's one thing. Then I think that there are many beautiful ways of chanting that have come out of India. And what I had done before with the Shivananda tradition and so on was more kirtan and bhajan, and very, very great, very important. But for me, Vedic chanting has just been so special. And I don't really know why.
That's great. That's great. I do understand. I do remember also the times when Paul was chanting a lot in our house, and I could hear. And you are right. He found it difficult to chant, but I always admired him because he never gave up, and he was so perseverant in trying to do it. And he taught a lot of people chanting in the UK, so we must appreciate that. That aspect, even though it was challenging. And that's very good that you said that. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah, the other question I have for you is, how do you feel as a woman, because a woman's body and mind is much more, I would say, interesting than a man's body, because men's body does not transition as much as the woman's body transitions with the hormonal changes and other things. So how is it been for you? Because in the last 50 years, you've been practicing yoga, and the last maybe 35 plus years with the Viniyoga tradition. What do you find as being special in the Viniyoga tradition that is helping the woman through her transitions?
Because Viniyoga is so intelligent about recognizing and accepting those changes and matching practice to those changes. You know, it's only in Viniyoga that I've come across the teachings about the different stages of life. I mean, I'm sure probably it's known by others, but they don't have the same subtlety of being able to match practices to individuals. You know, it's so much one size fits all. Very often how people are taught as youngsters, which I think is so sad to see people in their 50s and 60s and 70s being expected or expecting themselves to be doing the kind of asana practices, because it's always asana, that are right for teenagers and people in their 20s. Viniyoga accepts the different stages of life for both men and women, and the different responsibilities that come in those times, the different things that are expected. And for women too, it says, well, you know, there's this time, there's that time, there's that time. Different things are appropriate. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it is. It does. But to give you a little bit more thought for speaking, you said originally when we started conversation that you came to yoga first while you were pregnant with your first child, your daughter. Um, and of course, you have had other children as well. And you have also managed to be teaching yoga, training in yoga, etc. You've managed so many things. You have juggled so many responsibilities. So how has yoga played a role in supporting you? Or to make it even more general, how did you manage this? Was it yoga? Was it something else? Or was it a combination of things? Please let me know. Please let us know.
I was very fortunate in that I had a very supportive husband, a very loving husband, and he saw how important it was for me. He actually started off yoga with me. You know, we used to watch those television programs together because it was when everybody, Kausthub did know my husband, who died sadly in 2008. So he can imagine this slightly.
So I did not know that, and I cannot imagine Alex in a yoga class.
Yes.
I'm very positively surprised.
I must tell you, it was because he loved it too, and we did it together for quite a while. Because Alex would have tremendous enthusiasms about things, and you know, I mean, we used to go up to the Shivananda Yoga Vedanta Center together. And one time, they were having a very special meeting for Swami Vishnu Devananda, who was visiting London, and there was a lot of chanting, and we'd never really done that before. And poor Alex, I mean, he said afterwards, there we were, sitting on the floor, cross-legged, chanting things that we didn't understand. And I opened one eye and I saw all these people swaying, and I thought, what am I doing here? And that was Alex and yoga for actually several decades. Towards the end of his life, he actually did have a small practice. He used to call it doing my breathing, which I gave him. But no, so how did that? Oh yes. So anyway, then I mean, for a long while, it was just me teaching once a week or something. But then I got into the British Wheel of Yoga and into the education committee for a while. And then when the children got older and a little bit more independent, then I started being able to go away for courses, and that was when I started. So by the time I came to Viniyoga, you see, my children were already 17, 14, and 12 or something. So I could leave them for weekends and things with Alex.
That's still wonderful, because many people find that difficult because responsibilities are often put on the woman. And I feel, I talk to a lot of female students, and they say that that's one of the reasons why they're not able to give more time to yoga or develop this and things like that. So that's why I asked you that question, because I also want to ask you in this context, your opinion. It's only your opinion that why is it that even in the 21st century today, we do see a lot of yoga teachers being women, but when you look at the big masters and all the people in the positions, very often there are much more men than women. Like all the gurus today are still the male, not the female. I would like that there is at least half and half, if not more women. But what is your opinion that men are taking this position and not so much women?
Do you know, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to come back to that because I've remembered that I only half answered your last question.
Good.
Because I said that Alex had been very supportive, but the thing is that yoga itself supported me. I mean, you know, I feel that I'm a difficult person. I was a difficult person to manage, both for myself to manage and for other people to manage. Yoga has helped me so much in getting better at managing myself and understanding myself and learning to be honest with myself. It's taken many, many, many years. And I think so it was yoga itself that sustained me. And it's not just a question of doing lots of asana practice. For me, sometimes it's the study with teachers. You know, I've been so fortunate. You are a very, 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 very good teacher. And it's the study and the reflection and the taking things into one's life. Yoga gives strength and it gives steadiness, and it gives the ability to see things more clearly, which I really, really needed. So I think that's it. So now to go back to the last question that you put, why are there not more women gurus and so on? And the answer is, I don't really know. I do think it's quite probably that institutions take a long time to catch up with general trends. And the general trend, I'm so fortunate, over the last 100 years really, but particularly over the last 40 years, has been for women to come more to the fore. But perhaps it just takes longer for institutions to catch up with that. Certainly, I mean, I don't have much to do with the British Wheel of Yoga now, but I think it's mostly women at the head of it now.
That's excellent.
But that's organizations. That's not, you were talking more about the spiritual leaders.
Yes.
I don't know. Do you know, it may be something to do with what you said earlier. Women have more transitions than men to cope with. The transition from that we go through at puberty obviously is as discombobulating for men as for women. You know, for young boys, and for young girls, it's a very, very difficult time. But then, of course, we also have what happens when you are pregnant and have babies. Even if we don't have that personally, it's still part of our experience with friends and so on. And then there's the menopause and the changes there again. And I think those changes actually very often make our lives more interesting, but they do usually, I think probably for many women, at those times of change, it takes away your confidence. It takes away your sense of who you are. It's that thing that, you know, our self-identity, because identifying with the unchanging part of us, we identify so much with our roles, our appearance, how we are perceived, etc. And so perhaps it's because we have those extra times that men don't have in that way, which take away our confidence. I don't know what do you think? You've taught so many women.
Well, I don't want to give that opinion as a man, Sarah, but I do have some opinions. But let's leave it for another time, because now I am interviewing you, not the other round. You are trying to turn it around. You're so smart.
Well, it would be very interesting.
My question to you is, what is your advice? You know, what is your advice to to the women who are feeling, let's say, judged or criticized, or themselves feeling down during these kind of transitions and things like that, because you have been through many of these transitions yourself, and you're, I want to say to the audience, you are the most authentic person I know. You mean you don't care how you are perceived, right? Because just a few moments ago there was a telephone call and you just went out. I mean, you didn't worry about what people are going to think about you. So what is your advice? Because I really feel you are quite authentic, at least now. I mean, maybe not 40, 50 years ago, I didn't know you then, but since I know you now, I can say that.
Well, it's very nice to hear you say that, Kausthub, when you're always so rude about me and my politeness.
Oh, that you are too.
Yes, but it doesn't have to get in the way of authenticity. It is difficult, isn't it, when you're going through times of change, when you're going through difficult times, when you're losing things that you had before, and it's partly about allowing yourself to feel low, allowing yourself to grieve for what is lost, perhaps. I mean, even it can be when you have children, you love them dearly, but you've definitely lost time to yourself for several years. There's so little time that you have for yourself for years. So there's often grieving involved, isn't there, in these times of transition? But there's so trying to focus, I suppose, as well, or allowing yourself that time to grieve, but then saying, yes, but there are wonderful things about this coming time. And I loved what Chandra said a fortnight ago about the joys of getting older, because I too agree with that so much, and I feel tremendously fortunate to have had yoga in my life, because of course that does help you prepare, I think, for old age, because for many people old age is so much associated with illness, or with an increasing rigidity of thought. And yoga doesn't allow that. It doesn't allow the rigidity of thought, and it helps you avoid the illness. It's obviously not forever, and sometimes not at all. I have wonderful friends who are ill in different ways, but yoga still really helps manage their illness, live with their illness in such a way that they are able to continue to enjoy life and to fulfill their dharma.
Sarah, what is the source of your inner strength? What would you say is the source of your inner strength?
It's the light within me. And in some ways, I think that it is beyond. It's certainly something. It's not the mind. It's not my mind. My mind is not the source of my inner strength. It's something that's greater than my mind. Something that's far greater than my mind. It's beyond my mind, and therefore extremely difficult to express with words, because the words come from my mind. And again, I do love the teachings of yoga, which have helped me understand that a little bit more. I always remember when I was growing up, as around about 13 or 14, I went through quite a religious phase, going to church and thinking, yes, I really want to be good, but how? Because whenever I got back home, I went on being horrible to my parents and horrible to my sisters, etc. And I thought, I don't know how to be good, because I can decide to be that I want to be good, but then I keep on doing horrid things. And yoga actually does help. Yoga gives you space.
Sarah, we would be so thrilled, if possible, to see some of those horrid actions from you, because I've never seen anything horrible you have done since I know you for so many years. So I'm wondering what those could be. It's difficult to imagine. It's difficult to imagine.
Yeah, my poor.
Sarah, the other thing I want to ask you is, you have been a source of great support in helping us with many of our publications, and I know that it's not just about the language; it's something more than the language. What is it that is fascinating you about all these publications of yoga texts and things like that?
I think it's such a helpful thing to be doing, to publishing these texts. You are bringing old texts into the awareness of people nowadays with the glorious teachings that they have. And I think it's a really important thing to do. I said how for me, it's not just what I do on my mat. It's to a large extent, it is the study that I have done in this tradition that has helped me such a lot. And so I feel very honoured that I'm able to help with these things, because that too helps me. And also when I'm say looking at what you have written, for instance, let's just take that and thinking, well, that's not quite right. And as you say, it's not just about the language. It's about what is it that needs to be expressed here? What is behind this? How to express that in the best way to make it understandable. And it's almost with these kind of teachings, with spiritual teachings, it's being understood at least two levels. It's not, as you say, it's not just the language, but it's also going to a deeper level. And that's where I always wish that I was a poet, because poets are good at expressing the essence of things in words. But there we are. So do my best.
That's great, because we really are very honored as well that we have your support, because you're not just correcting our language, but you're also asking me very important questions whenever you don't understand something, or whenever there is something that needs some clarification. And in this way, I want to equate you to Ganesha, because when Ganesha was asked by Vyasa to write the Mahabharata, Ganesha said, I will write it, but only when I understand it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You must write it. You must not stop saying it. You must not stop, because I'm going to write it very fast. But then Vyasa said, okay, you will only write it only when you understand it. So Ganesha was at times asking Vyasa clarification, saying, hey, this doesn't make sense. What is it? So Ganesha made the Mahabharata a much better text. In the same way, you are making our publications much better, because you're asking very important questions when you are going through this text. So thank you so much about it.
Well, I have to thank you, because it's only because you've allowed me, because sometimes I feel, I'm sure these questions are silly, and I've got more confident in being able to ask them because you've been very patient with me. Thank you.
I just try my best to return the favor because you've been very patient with me trying to teach me politeness, but it's not good. So anyway, I have another question, which is kind of like the penultimate question. It's a semi-serious, semi-fun question. So I wonder what you feel, because it's not totally fun, but it's not, some people could think of it as funny. So my grandfather says that yoga is good for what we call atmika daihika manasa bhedat. Sometimes yoga is also very good for spiritual challenges or problems and things like that. So I know, because I visited your old house in the other part of England that was considered to be haunted. And I've even stayed a few nights where I kind of felt that there were some ghosts in the house. Do you think that yoga had any help to you to deal with all those creatures living in that house? Or was Alex enough to scare them away?
I think probably Alex was enough to scare them away.
But you know what I mean, right?
I never, it never really bothered me at all. I've always loved living in old houses and that sense of the past that you get there. And yes, so in fact, the house that I lived in before that was much worse, Kausthub. And my poor sons would never go up to bed by themselves because their room was definitely haunted. But we just used to say, well, you've got each other. We're downstairs, it's okay. I think, but to be more serious, I think yoga actually can help. If you feel that you've got something dark hanging over you, whether you feel that it's coming from your own mind or whether you feel it's coming from ghosts or spirits or curse or people whom you met who perhaps don't wish you well, I think yoga can help you because it is so powerful. Sometimes I think you need help. Sometimes it's not enough to do it, that you feel you can't do it by yourself. And at those times, then I think to go to somebody like you, who has proven yourself to be strong enough to help many people. Because I know of people who have come to you with those kind of problems, and I know that you have helped them. Yoga isn't the only way. I used to know a wonderful elderly man in this village. Unfortunately, he died before you were able to meet him, and he used to be called in when there were hauntings, and he used to get rid of them with his Celtic knowledge in our tradition. But I think yoga can help very much, and particularly chanting.
I'm very glad you speak about it, because this is something that many people are uncomfortable talking. That's why I brought that conversation in a humorous way, but it's a serious issue. Sarah, there is probably this will be the last question for you. And this is your advice as an elder. What is your advice to mothers now, young mothers now, who are probably in their 30s and 40s, who are very often, I have many students like that, taking the responsibility of career, motherhood, and sometimes even taking care of parents and things like that. And oftentimes as a single mother, because they're not necessarily in a relationship with the partner anymore, or perhaps that partner is not so cooperative, not, I mean, they're not so fortunate as some others are who have very cooperative and supportive husbands. So what is your advice to such women? Because I see many students like that, and they are often suffering from a lot of problems like burnout and autoimmune disorders and things like that. What would be your advice?
Don't try and be perfect. Can be perfect. It's try to let go of that. We're brought up to try and be perfect, and I think particularly women still, in a way, although perhaps that's unfair to men to say that. But anyway, I think that's the most important thing. And the annoying thing is that people say these kind of things. Oh, all children need is your love. Don't worry. And when you're getting yourself all tense and uptight, the one thing you can't do, at least I was very bad at it if I got very tense and uptight, is to give love. You know, it's much easier to think, oh, I've got to clean the kitchen floor, you know, than to hug your child when you're feeling very uptight. So try to find something that helps, something like yoga that helps you to relax, that helps you to soften. I think it's about softening. When we get stressed, it's as though we feel we've got to hold ourselves together. We've got to put ourselves in armor, which of course is disastrous. If you need to love small children who need a soft lap to sit on, not an armor. Try and accept help. Try and, you know, sometimes help comes from very strange places. Perhaps it's a neighbor who was never very nice to you before, but who suddenly softens when she sees your baby in a pushchair or something. You know, try and be open to accepting help from wherever it comes, obviously providing it does feel right, and give yourself some space and some time. And again, that has to change when you've got babies, small children. It might be that you have very little time to yourself, so you have to try and find ways of being in touch with yourself in a way that you only ever did it before when you were on your yoga mat. Now you've got to try and do it when you are also with your children or with others. But it can be done. It's not easy.
Yes, you're a good example of that. You have done it. So that's why I'm asking you. But you had support. You said you had support. There are many people who don't have support, Sarah.
Yeah. Yes.
Good. Sarah, do you want to say some concluding words to the people, or do you want to make a concluding chant to our friends today? I want to thank all of you, my dear friends, for coming today afternoon to listening to our conversation. Please feel free to share this video on your Facebook or Instagram pages so that more people will hear Sarah and follow her advice. So thank you for coming, my dear friends, and let us conclude with Sarah's final words or chant, whatever she chooses.
I want to thank you for all you've done for me. You've helped me so much be more authentic, be more myself. Thank you. Thank you.
Good.
I'll finish with just a 3-line chant, okay?
Please.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya. Om Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Om Mrityorma Mritam Sangamaya. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you, Sarah, so much. Namaste. Thank you, friends, and have a nice Thursday afternoon or evening, wherever you are. Namaste, friends.